All right, ladies and gents, let's go ahead and begin our reading. So, we're going through chapters 1 and 2. I may decide if that we are taking way too long to get through all of chapter 1, then I may just go ahead and decide just to do chapter 1 with you, and you'll have to do chapter 2 by yourself. So, let's go ahead and dive straight into it. The Hound of Baskervilles. That's our author, Conan Doyle. So chapter 1, always going to be introducing our main character, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, who is usually very late in the morning, save upon those not infrequent occasions when he was up all night, was seated at the breakfast table. I stood upon the hearth rug and picked up the stick which our visitor had left behind him the night before. It was a fine, thick piece of wood, bulbous-headed, of the sort which is known as a penning lawyer. Now, these two words I did put online for you in a document. Bulbous-headed is shaped, anything shaped like a bulb, like a light bulb, okay? And then a penning lawyer, I had no idea what that was before reading this story a few weeks ago, but a penning lawyer is also defined, and it is basically just a type of walking stick with a bulbous head. That's it. Just under the head was a broad silver band, nearly an inch across. To James Mortimer, M.R.C.S., from his friends of the C.C.H., was engraved upon it with the date 1884. It was just such a stick as the old-fashioned family practitioner used to carry, dignified, solid, and reassuring. All right. So what do they mean by stick? This is a cane, all right? Let's make sure that we are understanding that, we're remembering that. So if you want to, write it down to the side. This is a cane, a walking stick. What is a family practitioner? Come on. Anyone know what a family practitioner is? It's a family doctor, exactly. Yes. It's a doctor. I'll just say doc. Why not? It's a doc. Right there. A family doc. Well, Watson, what do you make of it? Holmes was sitting with his back to me, and I had given him no sign of my occupation. How did you know what I was doing? I believe you have eyes in the back of your head. I have at least a well-polished, silver-plated coffee pot in front of me, said he. So how did he see him? Saw him in the reflection of the coffee pot. Boom. But tell me, Watson, what do you make of our visitor's stick? Since we have been so unfortunate as to miss him, and have no notion of his errand, this accidental souvenir becomes of importance. Let me hear you reconstruct the man by an examination of it. So basically, look at the stick. Since he left it here, we have no idea who this guy is. Let's see what you can deduce from the stick. Reconstruct the man by an examination of it. I think, said I, following as far as I could the methods of my companion, that Dr. Mortimer is a successful, elderly medical man, well esteemed, since those who know him give him this mark of their appreciation. Good, said Holmes. Excellent. I think also that the probability is in favor of his being a country practitioner who does a great deal of his visiting on foot. Why so? I mean, this is a time way before cars were popularized. There was technically electric cars, even in this day and age. Very, very early electric cars. Came out in the 1880s. So everyone was going to be walking around on foot. So a family doctor who would travel around their neighborhood in the country on foot. That's what this guy did. And that's what Watson believes. Next page. Because this stick, though originally a very handsome one, has been so knocked about that I can hardly imagine a town practitioner carrying it. The thick iron ferrule is worn down, so it is evident that he has done a great amount of walking with it. Perfectly sound, said Holmes. Now, this is one of those other words that I had to make sure to add to your list. That is online, the ferrule here. Anyone can guess what that is? It's on a walking stick, obviously. So can anyone guess what that might be? The foot, yeah, the foot bottom part, right, exactly. So when it comes to a walking stick, to make sure that the stick doesn't crack down the middle, they would encase the bottom part of it in iron, or in some type of metal, usually sometimes copper, things like that. So that's what a ferrule is. It's also already online for you, so I won't write it down to the side. And then again, there's the Friends of the CCH. I should guess that to be something hunt. So he thinks the CCH is something something hunt. The local hunt to whose members he has possibly given some surgical assistance, and which has made a small presentation in return. Really, Watson, you excel yourself, said Holmes, pushing back his chair and igniting a cigarette. I am bound to say that in all accounts which you have been so good as to give of my own small achievements you have habitually underrated your own abilities. It may be that you are not yourself luminous, but you are a conductor of light. Some people, without possessing genius, have a remarkable power of stimulating it. I confess, my dear fellow, that I am very much in your debt. So, right here, Sherlock Holmes seems to be really surprised, really kind of proud of Watson's achievement. Sherlock seems proud of Watson. Right here. But let's make sure that we tie down a little bit what he said. It may be that you are not luminous. Can anyone tell me what luminous means? Anyone, if you've ever seen Harry Potter, you should know what this means. It is lit up. Something luminous lights up. All right? So, he said, it may be that you are not yourself luminous, so you're maybe not as bright as some people. All right? So luminous in this, using it in this way means bright, or you can say smart. So you might not be as smart, but you are a conductor of light. You do have some smart there. It's just not as luminous, as bright as mine. Some people, without possessing genius, have a remarkable power of stimulating it. So even though you're not a genius, you're pretty good at faking it. He had never said as much before, and I must admit that his words gave me keen pleasure, for I had often been piqued by his indifference to my admiration, and to the attempts which I had made to give publicity to his methods. Piqued is right here another word that I have put online for you. This means I've been kind of angered. You've kind of ticked me off a little bit. Angered, angry. I was proud, too, to think that I had so far mastered his system as to apply it in a way which earned his approval. He now took the stick from my hands and examined it for a few minutes with his naked eyes. Then, with an expression of interest, he laid down his cigarette, and carrying the cane to the window, he looked over it again with a convex lens. Interesting, though elementary, said he, as he returned to his favorite corner of the settee. There are certainly one or two indications upon the stick. It gives us the basis for several deductions. Has anything escaped me? I asked with some self-importance. I trust that there is nothing of consequence which I have overlooked. So all of a sudden, now since he got one nice pat on the back, he is, oh, I'm awesome here. I'm afraid, dear Watson, that most of your conclusions were erroneous or wrong here. So erroneous is going to mean wrong. When I said that you stimulated me, I meant, to be frank, that in nothing, noting your fallacies or your wrong thoughts, I was occasionally guided towards the truth. Not that you are entirely wrong in this instance. The man is certainly a country practitioner, and he walks a good deal. Fallacies is one of these other words. It's going to be a wrong idea. To have the wrong idea. Have you ever been in the middle of an argument and realized you were wrong halfway through? That's because you believed a fallacy. a wrong, incorrect, incomplete idea. So, the man is certainly a country practitioner, and he walks a good deal. Oh, then I was right, to that extent. But that was all? Oh, no, my dear Watson, not all, by no means all. I would suggest, for example, that a presentation to a doctor is more likely to come from a hospital than from a hunt. What do you do in a hunt? Anyone know? Can guess? What you would do in a hunt?
Track down animals.
Sorry?
Track down animals.
Track down animals, right. It's a hunting lodge, all right? You go to a hunt, and it's like a country club. All right? People go there. You might go hunt together, or you just sit around and smoke. That's all you might do, or drink whiskey and things like that. So it's just like a gentleman's club. You just go there to go hunting or just hang out with guys. That's all right? So he said it's more... that a presentation to a doctor is more likely to come from a hospital than from a hunt. And that the initials CC are placed before that hospital, the words Charing Cross very naturally suggest themselves. So there's not going to be too many hospitals around their area of the woods. So more than likely they're going to be able to piece it together where the hospital is from. All right? You may be right. The probability lies in that direction. And if we have this as a working hypothesis, we have a fresh basis from which to start our construction of this unknown visitor. Well then, supposing that CCH does stand for Charing Cross Hospital, what further inferences may we draw? Do none suggest themselves? You know my methods, apply them. I can only think of the obvious conclusion that the man has practiced in town before going to the country. I think we might venture a little further than this. Look at it in this light. On what occasion would it be most probable that such a presentation would be made? When would his friends unite to give him a pledge of their goodwill? Obviously, at the moment when Dr. Mortimer withdrew from the service of the hospital in order to start a practice for himself. We know there has been a presentation. We believe there has been a change from a town hospital to a country practice. Is it then stretching our inference too far to say that the presentation was on the occasion of the change? Well, it certainly seems probable. Usually whenever you move from one area to another, one job to another job, you end up kind of like, they throw you a party in some cases. And it's all amicable. If you're moving, you're starting your own business, things like that. If I retired from South Haven High School, they would throw a party for me, usually. They would try to give me a commendation. They would tell me, hey, he's been here for this long. It's been really great to have him here. Let's make sure everyone thanks him as their way out, things like that. So that's when they would obviously have a commendation or a gift for your service. That's what he's saying here. Now, you will observe that he could not have been on the staff of the hospital, since only a man well established in a London practice could hold such a position. And such a one would not drift into the country. What has he then? If he was in the hospital and yet not on the staff, he could only have been a house surgeon or a house physician, little more than a senior student. And he left 5 years ago. Oh, when did it say on the staff on the cane? What date was it? Can you go back and look? What date was on the cane? 1884. And that was 5 years ago. So what is the setting? What day is this set in? 1889, right? So we now have a time in our setting where this is placed. Or when this is placed, I should say, for our setting. This is going to be 1889. Good important details to make sure to pick up on. The date is on the stick. So your grave, middle-aged family practitioner vanishes into thin air, my dear Watson. And there emerges a young fellow, under 30, amiable, unambitious, absent-minded, and the possessor of a favorite dog, which I should describe roughly as being larger than a terrier and smaller than a mastiff. We don't have that information yet, so that's kind of strange for us. Okay. Most of these words you should already know. Ambitious, you should know what that means already. Absent-minded, something that is not in your brain if you regularly forget a lot of things. Amiable is a word that I did define for you already. It's good-natured, really well, easily liked. Good-natured, easily well-liked, things like that. I laughed incredulously as Sherlock Holmes leaned back in his settee and blew little wavering rings of smoke up to the ceiling. As to the latter part, I have no means of checking you, said I. But at least it is not difficult to find out a few particulars about this man's age and professional career. From my small medical shelf, I took down the medical directory and turned up the name. There were several Mortimers, but only one who could be our visitor. I read his record aloud. So, in order to solve all this issue, Watson has a really easy way of doing it. He just goes to a shelf, picks up a directory, which is like a list of names and people, and then he just flips through it until he finds the guy's name. Easy as that. Mortimer James, MRCS. 1882, Grimpen, Dartmoor, Devon. House surgeon from 1882 to 1884 at Charing Cross Hospital. There we go. So we get kind of the confirmation of where he's from. Winner of the Jackson Prize for Comparative Pathology with essay entitled Is Disease a Reversion? Corresponding member of the Swedish Pathological Society. Author of Some Freaks of Atavism. Do We Progress? Journal of Psychology, March 1883. Medical officer for the parishes of Grimpen, Thorsley, and Highborough. All right. So we get all the basic information for this stick owner. No mention of that local hunt, Watson, said Holmes with a mischievous smile. But a country doctor, as you very astutely observe. I think that I am rather justified in my inferences. As for the adjectives, I said, if I remember right, amiable, unambitious, and absent-minded. It is my experience that it's only an amiable man in this world who receives testimonials, only an unambitious one who abandons a London career for the country, and only an absent-minded one who leaves his stick and not his visiting card after waiting an hour in your room. So that's why he used those three, as he says, adjectives to describe the man: amiable, unambitious, and absent-minded. Because, first one right here, he is amiable because not too many people are going to give him a gift like that. He is unambitious because he left London to go to the country, which then was like going backwards. You're going to get a lot less money for him. And absent-minded because he left his stick, but not his calling card, all the information for him. And the dog has been in the habit of carrying this stick behind his master. Being a heavy stick, the dog has held it tightly by the middle, and the marks of his teeth are very plainly visible. The dog's jaw, as shown in the space between these marks, is too broad, in my opinion, for a terrier, and not broad enough for a mastiff. It may have been, yes, by Jove, it is a curly-haired spaniel. He had risen and paced the room as he spoke. Now he halted in the recess of the window. There was such a ring of conviction in his voice that I glanced up in surprise. My dear fellow, how can you possibly be sure of that? For the very simple reason that I see the dog by himself on our very doorstep. And there is the ring of its owner. Don't move, I beg you, Watson. He is a professional brother of yours, and your presence may be of assistance to me. Now it is the dramatic moment of fate, Watson, when you hear a step upon the stair, which is walking into your life, and you know not whether for good or ill. What does Dr. James Mortimer, the man of science, ask of Sherlock Holmes, the specialist in crime? Come in. So right here we get a really nice, good build-up of tension because we are waiting for this person to enter into the apartment. And instead of just saying that he entered into the apartment willy-nilly, instead he had this really slow process of building up tension. So I would suggest writing that down. This is a build-up of tension right here in this paragraph. It's an amazing way of doing it. So we have this beginning part, don't get up. This is a professional brother of yours. He's a doctor as well as Watson is. Now you might be more important to me, but this right here is where we're going to get. Now the dramatic moment of fate, Watson, when you hear a step upon the stair, which is walking into your life, and you know not whether for good or ill. What did Dr. James Mortimer, the man of science, ask of Sherlock Holmes, the specialist in crime? Come in. So all of that is, I guess, this really good buildup of tension, of you thinking, what does need to happen? What is going to happen? What does this character need, this James Mortimer? What does he need? So that's going to be a nice, good buildup of tension in us, the readers. It's really well, skillfully done. The appearance of our visitor was a surprise to me, since I expected a typical country practitioner. He was a very tall, thin man, with a long nose, like a beak, which jutted out between two keen gray eyes, set closely together and sparkling brightly from behind a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. He was clad in a professional but rather slovenly fashion. Slovenly, think about the word slop, something disgusting, kind of not really well put together. So slovenly is going to be kind of dingy or dirty. He was clad in a professional but rather slovenly fashion, for his frock coat was dingy. Oh look, I already used that word too. And his trousers frayed. Though young, his long back was already peering bow, and he walked with a forward thrust in of his head, and a general air of peering benevolence. Benevolence is another word that I made sure to define for you. Benevolence is like the acts of goodwill, doing well for other people. So doing well for others. Benevolence is the word that means doing well for others, thinking well of other people, trying to give them good, trying to do good for them. So he's a tall guy. Now I'm not super tall, but at least I can kind of replicate what he looks like. His long black hair, his long back was already bowed, so he was really tall, his slightly bowed back, and he walked with a forward thrust of his head, so like he looked like a bird, like this. Okay. Have you ever seen really tall people? They usually slouch sometimes, and that's kind of where we might get this idea of him slouching. And so now sticking the head out is another thing that you might do if you are really tall and you're already slouching. As he entered, his eyes fell upon the stick in Holmes' hand, and he ran towards it with an exclamation of joy. "I'm so very glad," said he. "I was not sure whether I had left it here or in the shipping office. I would not lose that stick for the world." Presentation, I see, said Holmes. So, real quick, to make sure that we are following along, make sure that we can come back to this anytime we want to. I would suggest putting a little section right here. This is going to be the description. James Mortimer. I would suggest making sure that we can come back easily to it, that you can find that just by flipping through, by writing down a note next to it. This is a description of James Mortimer for everyone in the back. I just kind of put a little box bracket. This is a description of James Mortimer. That way we can always come back to it rather easily. So a presentation, I see. Yes, sir. From Charing Cross Hospital. From one or two friends there on the occasion of my marriage. So, were they right? Were all their points made correct? Did anyone say anything about marriage? No. So, we see that they are not all correct. They're on the occasion of my marriage. So, Holmes and Watson were not fully correct. So Holmes and Watson were not fully correct. Let's see what parts of it they did get correct, though. "Oh, dear, that's bad," said Holmes, shaking his head, because he was just proven not fully correct. Dr. Mortimer blinked through his glasses in mild astonishment. "Why was it bad?" Only that you have disarranged our little deductions. Your marriage, you say. So, Holmes is not super happy that he's married. Yes, sir, I married and so left the hospital, and with all hopes of a consulting practice. It was necessary to make a home of my own. Come, we're not so far wrong after all, said Holmes. And now, Dr. Dims Mortimer, Mr. Just a humble MRCS. So we see that he's not a full doctor. He's not a brother of Dr. Watson. A man of precise mind, evidently. A dabbler in science, Mr. Holmes. A picker-up of shells on the shores of the great unknown ocean. I presume that it is Mr. Sherlock Holmes whom I'm addressing, and not... Oh, no, this is my friend, Dr. Watson. Glad to meet you, sir. I have heard your name mentioned in connection with that of your friend. You interest me very much, Mr. Holmes. I'd hardly expected so... Here's where I'm going to screw up. Dolichocephalic? I don't know. All right. There's a couple of these medical terms I just left out because there's some strange ones. We do know what they're referring to. All right. So I hardly expected so. Dolichocephalic, a skull. Okay. While this word is incredibly difficult, we do know it is describing a skull, or such well-marked supraorbital development. I do know what supraorbital means. That's going to be your eye sockets, orbitals. So we do know that this is in reference to the skull. This I do know for sure is a remark on his eyes. Would you have any objection to my running my finger along your parietal fissure? Strange question. I think I would ask why would someone want to touch my head? Okay, top of my head. A cast of your skull, sir, until the original is available, would be an ornament to any anthropological museum. It is not my intention to be fulsome, but I confess that I can covet your skull. Really weird guy. What if someone the first time he walked in here, like in my class, said, "Oh man, your skull is fascinating. Can I touch the top of your head?" It'd be kind of weird, okay? Yeah, exactly. You just say no right offhand. All right, stranger danger, call the police, mace me in the eyes, all right? Do whatever you need to if someone talks to you like this. So, I would be thrown off. Sherlock Holmes is not. He's like, oh, this is normal. Sherlock Holmes waved our strange visitor into a chair. You, sir, are an enthusiast in your line of thought. I perceive, sir, as I am in mine, said he. So he said he can see the same type of thought process happening in James Mortimer that he has in his own line of work. While James Mortimer is going to be more science-based, more physical science when it comes to the human body, Sherlock Holmes is going to be more criminal-based. But they're both enthusiasts. They're both going to love what they are talking about. I observe from your forefinger that you make your own cigarettes. Have no hesitation in lighting one. The man drew out paper and tobacco and twirled the one up and the other with surprising dexterity. He had long, quivering fingers, as agile and restless as the antennae of an insect. Holmes was silent, but his little darting glances showed me the interest which he took in our curious companion. I presume, sir, said he at last, that it is not merely for the purpose of examining my skull that you have done me the honor to call here last night, and again today. No, sir, no, though I am happy to have had the opportunity of doing that as well. I came to you, Mr. Holmes, because I recognize that I am myself an unpractical man, and because I am suddenly confronted with a most serious and extraordinary problem. Recognizing as I do that you are the second highest expert in Europe. Oh! How would you like to be told that, oh, you're second best? Probably not the best way, especially if you come here asking for a help, all right? So this is a little bit of a slap in the face. Especially to someone who is so egotistical, so high-minded as Sherlock Holmes. Indeed, sir. May I inquire who was the honor to be the first? Asked Holmes with some asperity. To the man of precise scientific mind, that the work of Monsieur Bertillon must always appeal strongly. Then had you not better consult him? I said, sir, to the precisely scientific mind, but as a practical man of affairs, it is acknowledged that you stand alone. I trust, sir, that I have not inadvertently, just a little, said Holmes. So we see that this little phrase here, this pause, is really well done to make him cut off. This is a cut-off point where Holmes is going to interrupt him. Quick interrupt. Right there. He has realized now, because he's such a scientific guy as James Mortimer is, he didn't think about what he was saying. He was just listening at what he saw as the facts. So he inadvertently kind of slapped him in the face. And so Holmes just said, "You just a little bit hurt right there," said Holmes. "I think, Dr. Mortimer, you would do wisely if, without more ado, you would kindly tell me plainly what the exact nature of the problem is in which you demand my assistance." So, now that he has been slapped in the face with, this right here, being told he's second fiddle, he is the second best of his job, he says, you better just go ahead and stop talking about me and just start talking about what you need, all right? So, from here on out, ladies and gents, you have Chapter 2, The Curse of the Baskervilles, where we're going to get a lot of information about why Dr. James Mortimer is even here. What is he doing at the consultant agency or at this apartment of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson? Now, about my own time here, I've been going for about 30 minutes. So I'm going to let you all do this second chapter by yourself. Now, notice it is rather long, and I get that, all right? So I'm going to leave this open for the next 2 days, so you all have time to catch up. If you don't finish it in class, you can always finish it at home as well. You'll have direct access to it, writing it down. And if you need to, I do have it printed for you, all right? But I'm going to go ahead and let you take off Chapter 2. And if you don't finish it in class, you can finish it as homework, all right? This is about the start time that we need to start having you do your own work every once in a while.